Hi, everybody. This is Kate Haley with Glazer's Camera. Happy Saturday. Just want to welcome you all to joining us for this live session with Olympus today. We're excited to talk about this technique because it's one actually we've been trying to do an event on for quite some time. I think last year sometime we actually had one planned where we were going to be along the waterfront and use this technique down there, and we ended up having to cancel it for whatever reason. So today we're going to bring you that technique live. Before we do that, though, I'm just going to take a quick moment to let you know a couple things that are going on with the store right now. As you know, we are, or hopefully as you know, we're open Monday through Sunday. So every day, again, 9 to 6 Monday through Saturday and 12 to 5 on Sundays. So we're here for you if you want to come in and browse, take advantage of special offers that are happening. I know there's some really great deals on some Olympus gear, including a trade-in program. So you'll get a little follow-up note post this session with those details, but you can also see those online or you can come into the store. But there are a couple of special secret promos that if you signed up for this session, you will get via email. Again, you can also call the store. As we get into the holiday season, Glazers will be doing promotions throughout the season. Many of those started this week, and they are going to vary over the next several weeks. So historically, we've always done that 2-day sale where we have all vendors like Ray and Michaela here to talk to you about gear, help you make those purchasing decisions in a big 2-day sale. But this year is a little bit different with everything going on with COVID. So we're going to be spreading those discounts and those promotions out starting this week. So check your email if you didn't get it on, I think the email went out on Thursday for things that started this weekend. But we're going to be sending out emails a little bit more frequently because some of those offers are going to be changing throughout this time. If you're not on a mailing list, it's super easy to fix that. Just go to our website, scroll to the bottom where the newsletter option is, and get yourself signed up. Those promotions are also going to be available in store, so you're welcome to come in and shop. But if you want to buy online, just check out and see what's going on. So that's enough about that. So today, again, today's topic, we have Ray Acevedo from Olympus with us today. We also have Michaela, who's going to be hanging out on the YouTube chat, helping answer questions. And she might pop up on camera every once in a while. Who knows? But Ray's going to be leading this session today on learning the live composite mode on your Olympus cameras. If you have questions during this session, please feel free to post those in the YouTube chat or the Facebook comments. We'll do a little bit of Q&A throughout, and then we'll wrap the session up with more of that Q&A. So without further ado, I'll introduce Ray and let him dive into our topic for the day. Ray, how you doing?
Doing great, Kate. Thank you very much for introducing me and Michaela. And Michaela, thanks for jumping in as well to help today. We appreciate your time and attendance today. Live composite mode is a wonderful thing, if you will. You know, it's one of the things that truly promotes creativity. And I'll tell you, give you some ideas for that. Michaela will also kind of jump in because she is my extra creative using this feature. She's done some great things. And so she's got plenty of ideas and lots of different tools to suggest. You know, I'll show you things about using this obviously in the dark because that's where it was originally designed for. But there's so much more that you can do with it. So let's without further ado, let's get jumping right in. And you know, fundamentally is, you know, what is it and why is it so fun? Why is it so cool? And it's really you know, almost like a time-lapse feature, but it combines that with that similar to long exposure photography, like that found in a bulb mode. So the beauty of this, though, is that unlike bulb mode, is that assuming your first exposure is correct, your brightest light in that scene will never overexpose. And the fact that we can run this feature, depending on the camera, anywhere from 3 to 6 hours maximum total time, that again, that light would never overexpose. And that's just a great thing to see. The beauty as well on top of that is you can watch the process in real time all along as it's being created. Now, historically, to do something like this, photographers have to shoot multiple shots at the same shutter speed historically, one right after another or taking breaks in between. But either way, they have to composite them after the fact in post-processing. And as I said, this feature is unique in the respect that it does this all in camera just before it writes the finished file to your memory card. So it's truly, truly cool. First off, though, a list of what cameras, the Olympus cameras that have the feature. It started in 2014 with the EM10 camera, the original EM10 camera. So Olympus has had this for years now, and we were the first by far. There's only been one or two others that have recently kind of come up with their versions of it. But again, you see a vast number of cameras that it is available in. Now, most of the cameras that you saw on that list will operate in this manner. And we're illustrating this with two screenshots. And there's the number one and number two, because it's a two-step procedure, two shutter button press procedure to get started. And the first button press is literally to read the light values in that original scene according to the base exposure that you have set. And it's memorizing those values so that when you press the shutter button a second time, then and only then will it start recording the new light that's added to the scene. Again, never overexposing that original light unless for some reason a new brighter light was shown on that original subject matter. And again, you can watch this in real time live as it does its thing. And on top of that, both JPEG and RAW files can be shot, one or the other or both simultaneously. The fact that you can end up with a finished composited RAW file is the magic, if you will. Some of the specs involved, as I mentioned, the two file types, but the shutter speeds that are available to you are from 1/2 second to 60 full seconds for each of the individual exposures. And then maximum ISO up to 1600. And the beauty of that, some people think that that might be a hindrance. Well, the beauty of this is that the lower live composite type of time-lapse work doesn't require the fastest ISOs, the highest ISOs. Much of the shooting that I'll do, even in the dark, can be 200 or 400 max. And as I mentioned earlier, up to 6 hours. Pardon me, there's a typo there. It's actually 6 hours on the EM1 Mark III. Most of the other cameras are 3 hours. And how do you get there? Where is this found on each camera? So again, you've got dials shown with cameras listed. And fundamentally, you're going to find it in the earlier cameras in the manual mode. And you find that as you go all the way past the slowest shutter speed, which in the Olympus world is 60 full seconds. And then you find it at the very last option in that within the manual mode. On the newer EM1 series cameras and also the EM5 Mark III, you now have a B or a bulb setting on the dials. So that's where it would be found. And then on some of the more automatic camera, I hate to say it, not automatic cameras, but the EM10 series and even the EM5 III camera, you have an AP mode for the EM10 series and scene modes on both cameras. And they can be found, or variations of this feature can be found there. And I'll get into that in a bit with a little more detail. Just like this. So in those cameras, it's a simplified version. So you've already heard me talking about the two-step procedure where you're pressing the shutter button once and then a second time to start the process. Well, on the 10 series and the EM5 III it's literally just a one button push to start the process and a second button press to finish the process. The downside, if there is one, and it's rare, but the downside is that you, in this more automatic option, is that you don't get to manually pick the shutter speed that you may want. But the cameras overall don't disappoint. They'll adjust accordingly and produce a good file in my experience. So again, it's just a more automatic way to do it for those of you with either of these cameras. And some examples, the classic star trails, which is what most of us start with when we do this type of, use this type of feature. Just again, a nice dark sky gives you that. And then here, we've all got, most of us should have this type of scene available to us. And I know those of you up in Seattle, I've got I've shot from the Jose Rizal Bridge and used this feature, and it's just wonderfully easy. But again, the fact that the original light that's in the scene doesn't change, doesn't overexpose. So the light that you see on the horizon here didn't change even as it got darker. The only thing that changed and what I waited for was the traffic lines and the traffic lights to fill in the scene properly. And then Michela's done some great things with portraiture, and these are relatively simple, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Some still life, and again, using kind of light tools, light painting tools and colored lights. This is much easier than you might imagine. And again, the foreground light was fixed, and it never changed in the 20 or 30 minutes that overall elapsed time that this shot was taken. So nothing was overexposed there. And again, Michelle with great portrait and a nice tool. This was up in your area at a drink and click event, if I remember correctly. And again, the darker the sky, obviously the more stars you're going to see. In addition to that, though, this was also taken with our 17mm f1.2 lens, wide open at 1.2. So it's seen much more than we might normally. And then just a little touch of flashlight work on the satellite just to make it brighten up a little bit. And then fireworks, easily done. And obviously not a long time exposure, but again, it's a nice way to fill up the scene appropriately. And then traffic trails at dusk, again, you saw that earlier, but Frank Smith has done a lot of this type of work and does some great work. Again, pointing out the obvious here is that the bridge lights never overexpose in the total time that this exposure took place. I'm not sure how quickly that boat was moving by Michela, but again, even if it was an hour, those bridge lights wouldn't overexpose, and that illumination in that sky would not change either.
That one took a long time, actually.
Okay.
That boat was moving so very slow.
All right. And again, simple pop with a flash on the subject. She holds still while the light painting takes place behind her. And again, Frank with a wonderful scene. And the only reason I point this out is if there's some of you in the audience who just have not tried this feature before. This picture I took about a mile from my home. And sure, I live in the suburbs, but I wanted to just illustrate that under a good dark sky, and it's not extremely dark in my suburb, you can do it. You can do something like this. Start in your backyard. Put your tripod up and just see what it captures over an hour or two. And that's all it is. And once again, pointing to these trees here is that nothing overexposed. The unfortunate thing is I think this whole tree and the whole block has now been leveled for development. So at least I caught it. And once again, Frank, just some amazing things here. A combination of the star trails as well as some light painting on the arch. So that's part of the creativity that this feature really invites. So again, how's it being done? So I'm going to give you some screenshots to kind of illustrate what you see along the process. And this is the finished picture, and taken at a location out in the desert about 80 miles from me. And the process starts here, as you saw earlier. Once you engage the feature, you set an aperture, and generally, depending on the situation, if it's night sky, you're probably going to shoot wide open. And then once you see this, when you start the process, before you do anything else, you should press the menu button. And the menu button will take you directly to this page to allow you to pick your shutter speed. So for the night skies, you're going to do it much longer than a half a second. And for something, like I'm going to show you in a bit here today, I do it at the shortest amount of time, a half a second. But you make this decision here. And so obviously, if you've picked something that isn't right, you see that feedback right away to let you know that you need to slow it down or speed it up accordingly. And then showing again, your maximum is 60 seconds for your shutter speeds. Now, when I just mentioned by pressing the menu button, all of those features are found directly in the composite settings part of the menu that you see here. And the other thing that I want to point out on this page is you see the third line item, which says bulb time monitor. By default, your cameras are set to -7. And all it's doing is if you were out in the dark shooting night sky, it's darkening the LCD screen down dramatically. So it's not tough on your eyes, etc. But some people like myself thinks that's a little too dark. And so I actually brighten it up a little bit to the -3 position that you see here. So that's just an aside. Now back to, once you've picked your shutter speed, you return to this, the starting point, and just follow the directions as it says. So at this point, all you've done, you've already done your composing, your framing of your picture. And all you're doing here is letting the camera read the exposure at the shutter speed you have selected. And that's what it's done here. In this case, it was a 13-second exposure. So I have to wait for it to count down for that. And then once it's done, it will bring you this page. It's ready for composite shooting. And the interesting thing to note is that the camera actually will not focus until you press the shutter button for this page that you're seeing here. So the first one is truly just reading light values, not worrying about focus. So just be aware of that. And if you need to move your focus target a little bit to make focus happen, you can do that right here. Now, what you're going to see, and this is just kind of a map of what you're going to see as the process works. So you are going to see a live histogram on the lower left side. And you're starting from the bottom here, you're going to see a running elapsed time from start to finish. So again, it could be up to 3 or 6 hours. Then you're also going to see the shutter speed that you've selected, in this case, 13 seconds, and then the total running number of exposures. And in this case, when this screenshot was taken, it was 20 total exposures. Now, if I have a complaint about this feature on our cameras, is that it will not show us the total number of exposures nor the total running time once the picture is written to the camera, to the file, to the, excuse me, your picture's written to the card. So generally what I do, if I want to remember these things, I will take my phone out and just take a screen picture so I can remember those details as I go along. But again, this is what you'll see as you go along. So the starting point here is letting you know that this is the first of exposure at 13 seconds, and it shows you in real time, and you're going to see gaps here because these are frame grabs. So this is 10 shots. There's 20, and what happened here, two things. Obviously, we're starting to see light star trails, but you've got a jet that unfortunately ran across the sky. And then I decided to use a little red flashlight, very small red flashlight, to kind of fill in the subject a little bit there. And then a little bit more, and the star trails get longer. Nothing over in that jet, though, star trail, or excuse me, light trail overexposes. And then a little more, that's 40 exposures. There's 50. And I think that was it. Yeah. So this, after the second shutter button press, it's going to, if you've left noise reduction on, like I usually do, is it's going to run through that process before it shows you the image that you just taken, like here. So that's the image in camera. And then this is my post-processed version of it. And yes, I do have a version of this without the jet trails. So again, that's the process for the cameras, all of the cameras that are using the 2 shutter button press to start and a 3rd to finish. And as I said, that's most of them except for the 3 cameras I mentioned earlier, the EM10 Mark III and IV and the EM5 Mark III. Although the EM5 Mark III also has this option that I've just shown you available, okay? Now, light painting with live composite, and this is really where creativity comes in. And there's some, as I said, Michela's done a great deal of this. I've done quite a bit of it. And this is just where you can let your creative juices flow. So obviously, for this feature, whether you're light painting or doing some of the images that we have just previously seen, is we have to have a tripod. The camera's got to be locked down on a tripod. If you're doing something like this for portraits, then a simple flash or a light source, a small light source of any type. I mean, it could be a flashlight that you just quickly pop on and off. There's lots of different things that you can use to illuminate your main subject. And then creative lighting tools for some of these backgrounds that you're seeing here. And, whoops, I messed, there we go. Michelle, I'm going to let you jump in on this because this is actually your slide.
Yeah, of course. So here are a couple of different things that I've used as light tools in the past. There's actually officially sanctioned light tools as well. I think it's called lighttools.com, maybe, that has like light painting tools that has like the fiber optic wands and stuff. But you can really get away with some pretty creative stuff with things you might just have laying around the house, or maybe not have around the house. But my favorite, if you actually, after I go through these, we'll go back to the last slide really quick. The RGB light wands are great. There is a large giant one. It's actually what I've got lighting up my room right now. You'll see it in the top right here. Full RGB light wand works great for getting those big swirls that you see behind the people. And then there's the little spiffy, which you also see on the screen, that they sell at Glazer's too. And it's a great RGB light wand that makes smaller paintings behind people or painting the subject. I've also used the LED light up gloves. Mixed results there. You just want to have a bright light source. I mean, realistically, you can get away with using even the light on the back of your cell phone, a simple flashlight. It's not on here, but Christmas lights, those little fairy lights. Ray, if you could pop us back one slide, that would be. So our friend here in the blue with the squigglies behind her, that's actually just white light LED fairy lights, those really tiny lights. And I just was going behind her and shaking them all around like crazy to get that effect. This one here with the flames, that's a pixel stick. That's if you want to invest heavily into light painting, you'll look at one of those. They're a little bit more expensive for this purpose, but that's how you can get really cool lighting effects like that. And then this is that Savage light wand I was talking about, the RGB light wand. You could do different colors. You can get similar effects with that little spiffy bracelet as well. Just really experiment. There's so many different lighting sources. The only thing you want to make sure of when you're shooting like this is you have a bright enough light source, something that's going to be brighter than, or not brighter than the flash, but will be able to still be picked up if you are using flash.
Yeah, and Michelle mentioned and I've noted it here on this slide, the official source, and I don't know if the guy's gotten very creative and I'm sure making a good living. lightpaintingtools.com. And that is something I have done. And I've, for instance, this, and you're not going to see the color very well, unfortunately. This is kind of a purplish blue color, and it's attached to a flashlight. And then this is a much bigger, this is supposed to be orange, I guess, orange wand. So again, those are the commercially available options. There, you can do anything. You know, you can literally duct tape something to a flashlight, you know, that's got color to it. So just don't invest in anything unless you want to go crazy. And there are those who do want to go crazy. My friend Eric Frommer, who's up in your area, has just done some amazing work. And yeah, he's got a variety of tools, both homemade as well as some things from Light Painting Tools. But you know, this is literally just in kind of a, I don't remember, it was a hall of some sort, or a bar in the back, you know, back corner somewhere. But this wasn't a professional flash. It was literally just a, you know, a little quick pop of a flashlight, doing a little bit of painting on her. And then this tool, which creates the wings in the background. But it's just beautiful, you know, it's just beautiful. And again, just a little more simply here, but the ability, this is the same person. So, you know, you've got the chance to, unless the person is illuminated in some way, he or she can appear multiple times in the frame. And so again, that's the creativity of it. And then again, just another, this is one of those light bars of some, or multiples actually, and just different patterns and tools. So that's part of the creativity. It's a little more the finished look, but you know, he's very practiced at it. It was about 3 years ago when I was up there that he took us out to a park, and we did it, and I did it for the very first time. So again, a lot to see there. Let's go to a live demo, and I want to just show you a little bit about this. And let me make sure I've got everything on. And I'm going to make the switch right now, Devin. Okay, so I am going to just show you a couple of things. And I know I've kind of beat it to a pulp, but I just want to mention that the fact that nothing overexposes. So what I'm going to do here with the camera is I'm going to start the process, and I've set it up so I'm using ISO 100 at f8. Now, if you saw my face on the screen, and yeah, I know you did, is I've got some window blinds open. So there's some illumination on me. So it's not that I'm working in the dark here, but I'm setting the camera's exposure accordingly to work within this scene. So I've started the process one, and I'm actually going to turn on a light. There we go. And here I simply want to illustrate that nothing is overexposing here. So these individual exposures at half a second are continuing. And until I add new light, nothing is going to change. So I'm going to do just that. And here I am going to do a little light painting. Now I'm actually going to turn off this original light because I don't need any more. I may add a little more to that subject matter a little later. But let me get just a little bit of light going on in the background. And again, you see just, this is where I'm just kind of winging it here because I'm just going to see what I can fill up. So there was, again, a little bit of blue light. We've got the option to add some of that orange that you mentioned, that you saw earlier. and we can make it squiggly. Again, creativity is what this is really all about. And I'm going to add just a touch more light to the subject matter. And again, everything is working within the exposure that I had previously set. Michelle, any experiences that you want to add while I'm just kind of experimenting here?
While you're painting.
Yeah.
Oh no, my screen is the whole screen now. Hi guys. There we go.
Let me do something else here. I wanted to, and I'm going to stop the process. Once again, I am going to illuminate that subject, pressing shutter button once and shutter button a second time. And I'm actually going, I'm not sure I can do this though without you seeing my arm, but you probably
Ray?
will. Yes.
What light or tool or random combination of things are you using? Many people want to know.
Well, the tools I am using so far are, I showed you a couple of them. So far, the tools I'm using are from lightpaintingtools.com. They're these light wands, and I don't know if I should sit down, I'm sorry. I have three of them. I have a blue, an orange, and a red.
Can you switch so we can see them?
Pardon me?
There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
So, and I have just three different torches. This particular one I actually got at your store,
Okay.
at Glazer's.
Cool.
And then there are also little things like this. Again, this is a kind of a purplish one. Here's one thing, and again, I have no connection to lightpaintingtools.com, but I will say the magic thing that they offer is this little guy. It's kind of a universal adapter. So on this front side is where something like this, there's focus, something like this fits in, okay? Whoops, let me backtrack. The small side, and that fits in. That diameter is also the same size of things like most, milk jugs. So you could take a milk jug, insert it in there, paint that milk jug a certain color, and that's the light it would then show. On this back end, the larger diameter is where the flashlight goes.
Okay, cool.
So, and again, that's only because I've found they're very valuable and easy to use. So let's see, let me go back to camera. And I was going to do a little more painting, just white light. And I want to turn this one off. There we go. Am I starting? Yeah. So take a look at the spec. I mean, we've got 350 half-second exposures, and that's the beauty, is that nothing changes until new light is added. And that's how you can get up to, depending on your subject matter, that's how you can get up to that 6 hours of total exposure. So again, I know, and Kate, close your ears, because I know you're the flash, the auxiliary flash queen. But if
Well,
somebody
Michelle
there
uses
in
that
the
too.
audience, yeah, if somebody, somebody in the audience is truly got nothing except a flashlight
Oh, of course.
and their Olympus camera,
Yeah.
this is you can do things like this.
Well, and I've
you
used,
can-
I have a couple of portable LEDs that aren't colored like that, that are just like bicolor LEDs. And I've done portraits like down at Pike Place Market where I will light paint on their face with just a regular light and then do other light painting. But it is harder for people to stand still. So it's like making use of what you have, like Michela was also saying, is like using the light on your phone. There's a lot of options that you can do. You just have to have like that open creative mind and just want to play and experiment. That's really what this is all about as far as like the light painting side of things for sure. And then I just let people know, if you look at the YouTube chat, I did drop in the links to the Savage Light one and the little spiffy gear Lumi bracelet RGB lights. Those are also tools that I use. There's a new light called the Pavo Tube that came out. Actually, it's not that new. They've been around for a little over a year, but they just came out with like a 10-inch one. And that's bicolor and RGB. And it won't do necessarily like the light trails like the spiffies would, but it's also just a great small portable light source for $100 that's super powerful. But there's a ton of options out there, like the tools that Ray's showing, like the tools that are on that slide. And ultimately, it's like about creativity. I have a question for you, Ray, from a gentleman named Jerry. He wants to run through the settings you used in the menu screens. How do you set the number of exposures and the half second as your demo shows? So is that like going into the menu to kind of saying, this is how many shots I want to do?
All you're doing, you're not setting the number of exposures because that's all dependent on you and the time that you want it to run.
Oh, okay.
So that happens. Yeah, that you're starting that count by pressing the shutter button the second time, and you're ending that count by pressing it the third time.
Oh, okay. But you can set the interval.
So all you're doing is when you go to the composite settings page, is setting the shutter speed. And as I mentioned earlier, is that your options are from a half a second to 60 full seconds for each of the exposures.
Okay. And so that's in your menu system on the Olympus system.
Well, assuming, I'll admit I'm talking about the cameras where you're either in manual mode or the bulb mode, where as soon as you access the feature and turn the feature on, at that point, when you press, instead of following the instructions, which say to, and I should go back to this slide. Let me do this. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So this is the first slide, the home page, if you will, for the process. And at this point, instead of following instructions here, you should press the menu button. And when you press the menu button, it will take you to, I didn't go back far enough. It'll take you to this page.
Okay.
Which is the shutter speed selector or composite settings.
Gotcha.
So again, the shortest at a half a second, the longest at 60 seconds, and most everything in between. Okay.
Okay, cool.
So that's really all that's required. And then as you look in the lower right-hand corner of this frame where it says set OK, when you press OK, it will take you back to this page.
Okay. And now you're doing a 60-second.
Which is the starting point once again.
Okay.
But now you follow instructions.
Okay.
You follow the prompts.
Cool.
And then press once. And then it takes one shot for the shutter speed that you have selected and then returns to this page. And now you're ready and you press the shutter button a second time.
Okay.
And then the process goes.
Okay, cool. So
sorry to run through. Go ahead.
No, well, just a couple more questions that are coming in while you're doing that. Have you done any of this with fireworks?
Michela has. I have not. So let's let Michela answer
could
that
you
one.
speak about like any tips on what might shift for people that wanted to capture fireworks instead of light painting.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, instead of light painting. So, I mean, that's painting the sky with light in a way, of course. But yeah, what would you change?
So with the fireworks settings, I generally use all of the shortest settings possible. So I use a 1/2 second exposure because fireworks happen much faster than, say, star trails are going to happen, right? Ray and I argue about this all the time because he prefers live time for fireworks and I prefer live composite. But the nice thing about doing your fireworks with the live composite is that your scene around you will stay the same. Your initial exposure will stay the same, and you can see the fireworks coming up live on your screen as they're popping. That's why I do about a 1/2 second exposure though, because the fireworks move really quick. And if you're not careful, you'll get too many of them overlapping each other. If they're doing a grand finale, you're going to have lots of pops. So you have to kind of still experiment with it. And I will say that not all of them are winners.
Oh yeah, totally.
But I get much better firework shots than I've ever had before. Last New Year's, I got to shoot the Tower Bridge in Sacramento, which was like golden and all lit. And I got multiple pops of fireworks across the horizon around the bridge, which I would have eventually overexposed if I was just doing a long exposure. It was an amazing shot, but it's nice because you can see it building on your screen as you're going. So you can kind of know when you've got too much firework and it's time to turn it off.
Right. Because sometimes too much, because like you said, you'll get too many lines and too many layers and they cover each other up. And then you're maybe not getting what you really want.
Yeah, the white fireworks are notorious for that, and they'll go over each other, and then all of a sudden you've just got this white blob in the center of your screen, and
that's no fun.
That's not.
Well, to that point is, and again, I'll localize it for you, is that the number of times that I've been to shoot up at on the bridge, the Jose Rizal Bridge, is that the only times that you will see anything that's blown out or overexposed is because you've got traffic continually running on top of each other.
Exactly.
And that's fine as long as you've exposed correctly for everything else.
Right. So do you have recommended ISOs and apertures for fireworks and really in general? I mean, you're doing this on a tripod, so you probably want your ISO to be a little bit lower. You maybe push it up a little bit for some of the Star Trail stuff.
Well, yeah, again, remember is that the maximum with this feature is 1600. And the fact that this is all essentially about capturing movement and showing that movement. So it doesn't have to be, a fast shutter speed. So that allows the longer. You saw the example of the metal sculpture against the Star Trail sky. That was a 13-second exposure, and if I remember correctly, the ISO was around 640. Okay. So it wasn't that, that's not very high.
Right.
I've shot a number of these things with the ISO at 200.
Yeah, that's where I normally go when I play around in this space, is except for like the Astro stuff, but for like light painting in general, I tend to go lower on the ISO just to take that light back away and then let that shutter speed be able to open up more, 10 seconds, 13 seconds, and play around and really draw something interesting or light a person or a thing. I know that's kind of my take on that. And sometimes
that's perfect relative to what I'm doing. What you just saw here as well is that I put it at 100 because I do have some reflected sunlight coming in.
Right.
And I've got it at f8 or almost 7.1 actually. But I'm underexposing it intentionally up front in order to give me some leeway as I add my light. So that's always a good guideline for anybody who is going to do some, product light painting, as you've seen. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about, so someone was asking.
There is more, there's a few more slides after this, but that's fine. Let's go.
Okay. Well, I think they're pretty on topic, and then no more questions. We have about 15 minutes left.
Okay.
So someone was just asking about the look from half a second to 10 seconds, and that's going to vary because half a second can be a long time in photography world. 10 seconds is a very long time in photography world, depending on what you're doing. But do you want to talk a little bit about like what half a second versus 10 seconds might look like?
Yeah, I mean, for the star trails, for the night sky, the astrophotography, the longer the shutter speed, the better. And for instance, you saw the my example at 13 seconds, and that's probably the minimum I would do for night sky and star trails. If I were to do a half a second or a 1 second exposure, and that jet trail flew across the sky, there's a very good chance that I'm going to see gaps. I'm going to see dashes and gap,
Right.
dash, gap, dash, gap. So the longer the time, the less likely that is a chance of happening. For the work that you just saw here, the small product type of light painting, again, half a second is perfect. I don't need the longer exposures. So if I'm in the deep shade and I've got flowing water in front of me and there's something in the background that I want to see as well, that's going to take a little bit longer, but that's fine because that's that environment, that's that scene anyway. You want to see the motion in the water anyway.
Yeah.
Same thing with waves crashing,
Right.
if you're shooting at, at the end of the blue hour, you can do that with waves and just show a great deal of movement with the longer speeds. So, okay.
Well, and that's definitely, for those of you who are interested in trying this out, do some experimentation. Use your iPhone flashlight or your mobile phone flashlight, whatever you have handy around the house, and try half a second, try 3 seconds, try 13 seconds, so you can really see the difference as to what's going to happen and how that's going to affect your images. So let's get back to your presentation. I know you said you had some more slides, so we make sure that we get to all of it.
Yeah. Okay, so which brings us to daytime, which you saw some examples already from Frank Smith. But this is a nice thing. And yes, this is a shot I just did the other day. I was trying to find something that I had recently done. It's not a super shot, but we had a rare occurrence of some daytime white fluffy clouds in the sky, and so I ran out to try to find them. But yes, when you're using this feature during the day, it absolutely requires a physical neutral density filter on the front of the lens. And for those of you who are using the EM1 series cameras, which have a live ND filter feature, that's the EM1X and the EM1 Mark III, you can't combine the two. So it absolutely requires a physical neutral density filter on the front of your lens. Now, this is the finished picture. I'm going to show you a very sped up movie of the process, and you'll get to see clouds moving across the sky. One thing for those of you who are looking closely, you'll notice that the color in this final picture versus what you're going to see live is pretty different. And that's because I had forgotten that my white balance setting was incorrect. So the raw file allowed me to fix it. But here's the process, and you're seeing these are 2 seconds during the day. This is a 10-stop neutral density filter. And I probably wish I would have stopped it a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to let it run quite a bit. I thought the clouds were going to move a little more to the right, and they didn't. But this is the nice thing, because nothing else is moving except that there was a little breeze for the tree leaves. But anytime you're going to do something like this in the day, having a good prominent non-moving subject is a big asset to your finished picture. And I went 420 total frames here, or 419, about 14 minutes total. And then once again, the finished. So that's just another creative thing to add some dynamic to a static scene. Once again, Frank's done some just amazing work here, and some nice clouds moving across the sky there. and traffic, even traffic moving in the bottom. Oh, actually, no, that's reflected light on the bottom. And late blue hour type scene. And the thing to know, for those of you who may not have experience with heavy duty neutral density filters like 10-stop filters, there are many of them that will introduce some sort of color shift. So just be aware of that. Don't be alarmed by it. And that's another reason to shoot raw, so that you can either keep it or change it. And again, here, just, nice. Without the live comp feature, you just have a blue sky with a few fluffy clouds. This adds some dynamic to it, some strength to this old steel mill, And that is all I have, and I'm ready for additional questions. Michelle and I are both ready for questions. I don't know if you've got anything else, Michelle.
Well, Michelle, do you have more stuff to offer?
Oh, no, I was just waiting for the question. There's a couple.
Put you on the spot.
I always have something more to offer. What would you like me to talk about?
Oh, no. Well, I mean, the last question that had just come in was, do you use manual focus or auto? And Michelle had answered that in the YouTube chat. And really, it totally depends. Star trails, you can't really autofocus. Astrophotography, you can't really autofocus. But for portraits, autofocus can work great, as long as you do have that light coming on your subject.
Yeah, so two quick things on that. With the new EM1 Mark III, you totally can autofocus on the stars because there's starry sky AF. And it's amazing.
What?
Yeah, so the newest camera has starry sky autofocus.
Okay, never mind, I take it back.
It is, but it's super cool. And then the other one is in what I was talking to Liz in the chat. When I do the light painting portraits, you do want to have a pretty dark area to make that happen. Yeah. If you can't get a super dark area, you can always compensate with flash and stopping down a lot. But it's best to have a semi-dark area. So I'll sometimes hit my subject with the light wand just for the focusing portion of it, like right over their eyes, or I'll have them hold a light wand up against their eyes so I can get that autofocus right there on their eyes, and then trigger the flash afterwards. But you want to make sure that when you go to actually start the session, this light is gone, because if it's you see it trail out of the image.
Right.
Yeah, to that point about focusing that you just made, Michelle, is again, the very first time I did this in a park, we were working in complete darkness or very close to it. And there were three of us shooting simultaneously. And so one of us would shine a flashlight at the subject. We would all nail our focus first, turn the light off, and then proceed. So, but to astro work, yeah, you absolutely, unless you've got the M1 Mark III, manual focus is your friend. So
yeah, I know that when I've played around in that genre, I've always had to manually focus. And Paul is asking about recommendations for traffic. For example, working from the Jose Rizal Bridge, I've definitely photographed up there a few times, and I know I start my shutter speed between 10 and 15 seconds to try and get some of those car light trails. Do you find you're typically in that ballpark for things like light trails?
Well, again, because the feature essentially creates the light trails on its own, no matter what my shutter speed is. And if I remember correctly, I don't have the stats, the exit data in front of me, but the last time I was up there, I want to say that my shutter speed may have been around 10 seconds or so.
Okay.
Because I've shot just while we were still seeing a little bit of horizon line light. And then catching office lights as they turned on, et cetera.
Yeah.
So start around, somewhere around there should get you.
Okay, that sounds good.
What I do for some of my night scenes as well. Actually, most of my live composites, what I do before I even get into live composite mode is just shoot the scene the way I want to see it, in my head. So the way I want my sky to look, the way I want the buildings to look, the bridges, and I find my settings that way. So I do a test shot, and sometimes that might be a 1/2 second exposure, and sometimes that might be a 10-second exposure to get what I'm looking for, But you can usually find all the settings that you would want to use for live composite beforehand and just get it unlocked. So it's very variable, like Ray is saying. It just depends on where you are, what time of day it is, what you're trying to shoot. It's hard to give a complete answer.
Right. So, okay, but let's ask this though. What would you start your ISO and your aperture at for that situation?
For that,
Typically,
specifically shooting from that bridge, I'd probably put my aperture at f8, nothing smaller. And I would start at, maybe a 8-second exposure.
Okay. And your ISO, you'd keep that lower, like 200 or 400, just to have the cleaner image, right? Yeah.
No higher than 400.
Yeah. Totally agree on that. I mean, one of these
days. But again,
days,
it's, if you start, if you start the process, press that shutter button the second time, as soon as your first exposure is shown to you on the screen, you'll know whether it's right or wrong.
Spot. Yeah.
So you just press it a third to stop and reset something and start it again.
Yeah, there's totally a little bit of experimentation and fine tuning when you're in that space. Like Michelle was talking about, like set up the shot, get that in frame, get your settings kind of dialed in, and then from there you're experimenting. I haven't really had the opportunity to use this feature on these cameras. One of these days we'll do that, or I'll get to do that. Rentals. I was being yelled at me, rentals. But yeah, I mean, you get that starting point, you totally just kind of dial it in and have fun with it. So someone likes my purple nails. I'm actually from Atlanta, and I don't really follow college sports. They're asking if I'm a Husky fan, but I have friends who are Husky fans. So yay, go Huskies. I don't know. Anyhow, totally off topic. Anybody, we have just a couple minutes left. Anybody else have any questions about any of this before we go? Do you guys have any closing thoughts or comments or any of that before we wrap?
Yeah, my comment for obviously if you're watching this class, you've got an interest. So if you haven't tried it yet, you'll be kind of surprised as it is a little addictive.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, seeing one, how easy it is, and two, the unique things that you're capturing. That's where then your imagination, your creativity will then direct you. But it is truly an addictive thing to just experiment, because that is, as we've mentioned more than once here, experimentation is a huge, go hand in hand with this, frankly.
Absolutely.
So, have fun with it is the big thing.
Yeah. Normally every year as we move into the holiday season, I love to lead a group of local photographers and photography enthusiasts, and we meet up at the Carousel downtown, and then we'll go to Pike Place Market and just photograph the holiday lights and things like that. And I'm trying to figure out how I can do that this year without having it to do it like 6 times, because we still have limitations on how big of a group we can have and all of that kind of stuff. But it's one where I always bust out all of my different little LED lights and colored lights and tripod. And I also have the Omni filter kit stuff from Lens Baby, which is another like element of creativity you could add into this to kind of like take it even further. So for those of you who joined me on one of those in the past, hopefully we'll be able to do at least one this year. Just trying to figure out the logistics, since we can still only have groups of 5. Just comments coming in from the chat room. Just everyone loved the presentation. They learned a ton. They're grateful. And we even have people from as far as the Netherlands tuning in. So that is a surprise. Thank you for joining us from so far away. Thank you.
With that in mind, it's a great tool for Northern Lights.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that would be totally cool. That would be cool. Which you can sometimes see here in Washington, because I've actually photographed those here in Washington. So for all of you tuning in, thank you for spending a little bit of your time with us this afternoon. To Ray and Michaela, thank you for all the awesome information. I'm glad we were finally able to make this one happen. And those of you who registered, check your email in a little while for details on some of those promotions we talked about at the top of this session. We have more kind of Olympus-centric education happening this weekend. Tomorrow we have Lisa and John Merrill, who are local photographers and Olympus shooters, and they're doing a session called Photography for Good. And that's really about working with nonprofits, NGOs, and doing project work to help support individuals and businesses and that kind of thing, really with focusing on nonprofits. So there's still a few spots left in that. That's going to be a private Zoom session, so it won't be online like this. But you can still go register. And then Tuesday, we're going to hang out with Michaela, and we're going to talk about the Super Control Panel. So if you have not registered for those sessions, go ahead, check out our website, glazerscamera.com/workshops, to see those other awesome Olympus sessions. And in the email you're going to get today is also going to have a link to all the amazing Olympus promos that are happening. There's some super crazy instant rebates on a couple of different cameras. There's a trade-in program. There's a lot going on. So check your email. And thank you all again. Have a great Saturday. Ray, Michaela, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Michaela, I'll see you on Tuesday.
See everybody on Tuesday.
All right. Thanks
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.